I never saw the appeal of interactive movie games. They're like shows, but you progress by inputting the correct actions via the on-screen prompts. Maybe it's because of the year I was born in, where the genre has been out of popularity. And at the expense of sounding like a weeb, I thought it was mostly a Western thing until I found out that Japan gave it a try as well. Anime visuals in a genre that is essentially a show? What could go wrong? So I decided to give the genre a try through this game, Timegal. Timegal is developed and published by Taito and the Toei Company. It was originally released in Japan for arcades in 1985, but was later ported to multiple platforms throughout the years. And you might be worried about the language barrier, but fear not, as the game uses English especially for the Sega CD and PS1 port, the latter of which we will be looking into for this video. Like its contemporaries, Timegal employs full motion video or FMV to present the game's scenes. You play as Reika Kirishima, aka Timegal, who goes after the criminal Luda as he steals a time travel device. Luda plans to rewrite history and make it so that he's in charge. Reika has her own time travel device and uses it to pursue Luda by traveling through multiple time periods. It's a simple premise, but not without its possibilities. While the game starts off as a sci-fi game, it could have easily stayed in that setting. Instead, the time travel aspect gives the developers a very good excuse to have multiple themes and locations for the game. Not a bad choice if I say so myself. And it was really nice to see a character that's not just the usual hero of the genre. Reika is seen as a cheerful person with a sense of humor. She's not just there to save the day, as it were. And depending on how you view her attire, we can at least agree that she embodies tropes and designs of the time. There's a total of 16 stages, and you might think this is a long game, but not really. While some sequences are shorter than others, it's not really the culprit. The main culprit is actually the gameplay. As mentioned earlier, the game employs on-screen prompts which the player must follow to progress the story. If you don't, then you lose a life, and you have to restart from a checkpoint. There's also a time stop mechanic wherein Reika stops time and the player must choose the right option from a list of 3 choices. These are all done via the controls. D-pad for the arrow prompts and circle for the button prompts. You also use the circle button to confirm your choice when in a time stop menu. Everything sounds simple, right? Well, the PS1 port has one tiny problem. F***ing input delay. And it accentuates the flaws of the genre. Because of the delay, there were so many instances where it felt like my inputs didn't register even though I physically pressed the button. I was either too late or too freaking early. And for a game that is heavily QuickTime event based, this can make the experience an exercise in frustration. In addition, it gets tiring to watch the same scenes over and over again because your inputs didn't register properly. It cancels out the strong points of the game, which is a damn shame since they're the game's greatest assets. Moving on, this game has a score system. You get points by pressing the right buttons and you get bonus points when you complete a stage. Whenever you lose a credit, your score resets to 0. Honestly, the score system is virtually invisible. I understand that it's here due to the game's arcade roots, but ultimately it doesn't matter. Let's move to the presentation, which is the strongest point of this game. Timegal has the beloved 80s anime look. It's obviously appropriate back then, but in today's time, it definitely gives the game the atmosphere of nostalgia. Setting biases aside, the game does employ great visuals and animation. Things are fluid and suits the style well. There's a lot of animations and scenes, especially for deaths, which employ humor on certain occasions. It definitely feels like you're watching an anime, which is kinda ironic or apropos if you think about it. And while its contemporaries share the same visual style, this doesn't stop Timegal from standing on its own 2 feet and being discernible. If there's one thing I'd complain about, it's the reuse of certain animations and how on each death, they play the same shot of Luda laughing. I understand that this isn't necessarily a problem with the presentation, but it does get boring sometimes, especially if you see the same scene over and over and over again. With all the great visuals, you'd assume the audio is great too, right? Well, kinda. The audio that's there is fine. The intro theme is fine. The sound effects in the game are good, especially for the action sequences. And I appreciate that the characters, especially our protagonist, is voice acted. It adds to the charm and personality of the game. If you notice, I said audio that's there, because the main problem of this game is the lack of music during gameplay sequences. It's hard to ignore and make certain scenes feel vacant and lack impact. I don't know the reason behind this decision, but obviously the game would be better if it had them. And it almost feels criminal to not have music in a genre that in its very core is a show. Time Gal is an okay game overall. I think it's the best representation of the genre at its time and as a relic of gaming history. Disregarding my issues with the controls, I think this is a good experience if you want to very quickly pass the time. However, there is little replayability here even if you decide to choose random ST order in dip mode. In essence, this is a show, and admittedly, not a show that I think people would rewatch or replay multiple times. I suggest getting a copy of this game if you're a fan of the interactive movie genre, but I'd ultimately suggest against the notion. Prices for this game can be expensive, and for a game that is a short experience, I don't think it's worth it. You'd be better off downloading a ROM of this game instead or spending your money elsewhere. But if you're really adamant about it, at least stay away from the PS1 port. The input delay is not worth it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Hey guys, if you like what you saw, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. I want to reach 100 subs before we reach the second half of the year, so I hope you can help me on that. I have a Twitter at KenAthomos if you want further updates or if you want to hear me ramble. There's also a Ko-fi page if you want to further support the channel. Links are in the description. Take care!